Hello, everyone, and welcome to Feng Shui with Anita and Cheryl. And this is our YouTube channel and specifically our playlist, F.L.A.W.C channel, tuning into the F.L.A.W.C. This is where we like to introduce our flock to our flock because, Cheryl and I, between the two of us, we're not shy, as you probably know by now, and we have a tremendous circle of beautiful friends and colleagues and amazingly talented and gifted people that are walking their talk and helping to raise the consciousness of the planet in a multitude of ways. And our guest today is one of those people. And I'm going to let Cheryl introduce her to you all.
Absolutely. I have to say, when I met this woman, which is a few years ago, and she's now become my naturopathic doctor, I was a little, wow, she's so smart. And my first thoughts were, kind of out of your league, Cheryl. But truth be known, she is the funniest, wittiest, most talented individual. And she is so intuitive. Like, I just absolutely love her. We've connected numerous times. I am happy to call her a friend. Please welcome Dr. Candice Staniek. Candice, Dr. Candice, I am so happy you're here.
Thank you. Oh, I'm happy to be here too. This is wonderful.
I have to say, even some of your YouTube videos, when the pause started and you came out, I can remember laughing so hard. You came out with a video about washing your hands. Oh my word. Oh my word. See, you're even laughing thinking about it, right?
Okay, well, we'll have to all go watch that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so please share with us. We'd like to know a little bit about people's backgrounds and, their upbringing a little bit, because so many people, our generation, and it's a pretty broad time frame, our generation, were talented when they were young. And it wasn't supported. For some people, it was supported, but we've all gone through our own journeys. Tell us a little bit about yours. What was the basis for Dr. Candice at this point?
Yeah, that is a great question, and one I actually don't get to share very often. So I can't say I remember specifically having intuitive talents when I was younger, but I did start to realize I was knowing things when I was younger. And one instant in particular, I remember standing in my window looking outside, and there's like this bright light, except it was dark. And I don't know what happened after that, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. And
Goosebumps.
there was kind of a big pause in terms of bringing in my intuitive gifts, because it was one of those situations where it was scared out of me. And I was a type of child and personality that very much wanted to listen to her parents. So if I wasn't supposed to do it, I wasn't doing it. And that being the intuitive stuff. So I actually have had to work very hard in adult life to bring back the intuitive gifts and allow them to flow. And I can't say that I see them all the time, but I can say I'm open to experiencing things. And I'm just smiling because this week in particular and last week, I've had a couple patients where that was exactly it, where I wasn't expecting to have that be a conversation, and it did come up, and the patient's like, oh my gosh, that feels so right. And one of them in particular was actually skeptical to come see me, but another lady we know was like, yes, go see her.
That's such a great point. And I think right now, for anyone that's watching this, now or in the future, that if you have young parents in your life and they have some young children. We really need to get that message out there, because so many of us, I'm gonna, if I had to throw a number out there, I would say 95% of the people in our demographic, had their gifts really stifled or blocked off or cut off or shut off.
Or beat
And
it out.
so we have to know that as human beings, that we are spiritual beings, and that all of these young children coming in today, they all are coming in with amazing gifts, more so than any of us could even have imagined. And so important to get that message out there that, if they don't know how to support a child that has intuitive gifts, reach out to someone like Dr. Candice. There's lots of people out there that can help you as a parent to recognize your children's innate gifts and talents. So I just had to throw that in there because, I think it's really, really important. Yeah.
Cool.
And how did you go from, not having your gifts recognized to becoming a naturopathic doctor? Like, what does that journey look like? Because, it's always been intriguing to me, but I've never known the steps. How do you get to be a doctor of naturopath, right?
Yeah. So my journey was a little bit convoluted, I guess. I started out in business, finance in particular, working for a large company in Calgary. And my manager at the time said to me, either you get a finance or accounting designation or you're not getting promoted. And I thought, well, I might not get promoted here, but I will be getting promoted to something somewhere. But that comment started me on a journey of looking at all kinds of master's programs. So whether it was Master's of Science or business or whatever. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly how I came across naturopathic medicine, other than I had seen a naturopathic doctor because I was actually falling asleep at my desk in my 20s in the afternoon. I couldn't even stay awake. Didn't matter what I drank. And I went to her and I thought, oh, this is really cool. And she's like, oh, don't become a doctor. And I was like, what? It's kind of a weird thing to say as a naturopathic doctor. And so I kind of put it on the back burner for a couple years, but then that situation with my manager happened, and I was like, well, I'll just go look it up again. And I probably spent I don't know, 4 or 6 months searching all kinds of programs, and nothing resonated until I came across the naturopathic principles. And I read them and I was like, oh my God, I live my life like this. Like, that makes sense.
Wow.
Then I consulted a friend of mine who's also an astrologer, and I said, like, is this going to fit with my chart? Because I don't want to head down a path and then have to switch gears again, because this is a big commitment. And so she concurred that medicine could fit as part of my chart. And so I started taking the classes and went back to school.
Wow. And how long did that take? Yeah,
it took, so I had, so it was actually a 4-year program. I spread it out over 5. And in the middle of those 5 years, I took a year off and worked for a year and then went back to school. So in total, it took me 6 years. Wow. 6 years of the medical school and 4-year degree before that.
So you are well educated in all of this. How does that compare to like a GP, so a general practice doctor?
Yeah, great question. So basically, the first 2 years of school are pretty much the same, meaning that we all take training in sciences, clinical anatomy, physiology, all of that type of stuff. So those hours are comparable. And you can see charts of that because the school where I attended at Bastyr did a comparison with University of Washington. But even if you check top schools like Yale, you can see that those first couple years are pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. Where we differ is naturopathic doctors have about 800 hours in alternative training, so nutrition, counseling, physical medicine, herbs. And most of those top schools will have 0, maybe up to 8 hours of maybe nutrition, but certainly not of the herbs and other stuff. So when you look on an hour by hour basis, my training is within 300 to 400 hours of the top medical schools in the United States.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And yet with all of that education and training and, that commitment, that dedication that you had to endure, have you ever felt like when you first became a naturopathic doctor, had you ever felt slighted or, maybe for a better word, maybe chastised a little bit, and people go, oh, well, naturopathic doctor, like she's not really a doctor, or, did you ever feel like you were just kind of like on the outside edge and maybe not given the credibility that a general practitioner maybe would have coming out of the gate?
Yes, I have. I've heard a number of different comments patients have shared with me, and yes, that's part of the journey in Alberta. I wouldn't say that's part of the journey in Washington. I'm also licensed in Washington, and in Washington state, naturopathic doctors are known as physicians. It's a primary care physician. So it's a really interesting dynamic and view. I can't say that that's the same through all the US states, because certainly Florida is not open to naturopathic doctors, and it's very restricted if someone was to practice there. But it's a different experience depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
Wow. Almost the states themselves, or the governing of the states, have some awakening to do yet.
Yes.
Cool. So your sense of humor, Candice, and being able to tap into your intuition with a client, can you kind of walk us through, like, do you see, do you hear, how does that work? If you can describe it, I think that's very cool.
Yeah. So it's different for each patient in terms of how that might come in. I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm clairsentient, so I can feel something. Sometimes, like yesterday, for example, I will get an image, right? Someone will be talking and the image just flashes up. And then I take time to share that at the appropriate moment when it comes up. Sometimes with the clairsentient, I can feel in my body what's going on with the patient. And that's interesting experience, because when I'm doing physical exam with the patient, they'll be going along and thinking they're sharing, and all of a sudden I'll ask them a question. I'll be like, well, are you feeling this? And they're like, well, how did you know? And I'm like, because I can feel it. They're like, oh. So from that point of view, not that I feel everything, but there's no really hiding in my office when it comes to that.
Well, and we teach in feng shui, energy doesn't hide. So even in the physical body with a practitioner such as yourself that's very intuitive, energy can't hide.
No.
No, very cool. Very cool. So you have a YouTube channel. So how do people reach out? How do they find out more about Dr. Candice?
Yeah, so there's a few different streams, and I'm just going to be straight up. I'm experimenting with different things. So I do have a TikTok channel that's a little bit more fun and lively. I'm looking at YouTube, but it's very teeny tiny. And then the other avenues would be Facebook. I have a Facebook page and group for those that are interested.
Well, we'll make sure that we put all the links in the comments below so that everybody watching this can certainly reach out to you if they like. So now, what would be the reason that someone would come to see a naturopathic doctor? Do you find that when people are at the end of, maybe they are not getting the answers from their traditional practitioners, that then they come and see you? Or do you see more and more, do you see people that come to seek out a naturopath first before going to a general practitioner? Like, what's kind of like the demographic of your clientele, and what would that look like? Because I've never seen a naturopath myself. However, I know people that have, and I don't know what the steps are, right? Like, would I come and see you once? Do I come and see you every month? Obviously, case by case would determine the recommendations, obviously, that you would give them. But yeah, could you kind of maybe walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll start with walking through the steps. So visiting a naturopathic doctor is a little bit different than visiting a general practitioner, in that I do recommend my patients to try and have a meet and greet or discovery call with a naturopathic doctor, because we all have something that we like to treat or that we're really good at treating. And so it's not the same as walking into your general practitioner and you get kind of the same thing regardless of which doctor you're seeing on the first visit. Because naturopathic medicine really sets itself aside by having individualized medicine. So I tailor my treatment plans depending upon who's sitting in front of me. I might have specific remedies I go to for certain things because I start to trust the remedies and know that they work for those particular things. But the person in front of me, like you two, would have two totally different treatment plans, even if I was treating the same thing, if that makes sense. The other area where naturopathic medicine really stands out is in preventive care. So preparing for your future, preparing your body and creating this amazing body that you have and supporting it for the future. So that's where, again, you're going to have a different experience than going to traditional medicine that's treating the symptoms and the issues that are right now. So that's kind of one thing. In terms of demographics, I've been kind of watching this and it's very interesting. The individuals that I would say 25 to 30 at this time are some of the individuals that will start off with a naturopathic doctor first. They won't even go to a medical doctor. They're like, I know I have issues. I want someone that's going to work with me and I want to figure out what's going on right now, which is very interesting. The other cool demographic that I've seen, individuals that are, I would say 35 and up, most of them have been to their medical doctor first. They're not getting the answers that they're looking for, or they feel like something's off in what they're hearing, and then they'll seek a naturopathic doctor. So it's really interesting to watch the two kind of demographics from my perspective. That's been my
that is interesting. And so I think that might also be attributed to the awareness or the awakening of consciousness and alternative therapies, and the fact that science is now validating a lot of energetic, what might have been interpreted as out there woo-woo kind of stuff, right? So science is starting to validate that. So I think that's fantastic that younger demographic is actually seeking out the energetic cure first, right? Because I think in naturopath, I mean, obviously it's more energetically based than chemical based, right?
No, actually, I will politely correct you on that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
So that's where there's a lot of confusion that I've seen when people come into my office for the first time. They have this perception that naturopathic medicine is not scientifically based, and that's not true. The first 2 years of my education, all the naturopathic doctors is scientifically based, is equivalent to medical doctors.
Right.
So we do have the scientific training. Where it varies is the approach that the individual naturopathic doctor might take with their patient. So you could see someone that's more what we call green allopath. So they take more of the medical approach of treating symptoms, but they're using herbs to treat the symptoms. Or you have the other naturopathic doctors that are a vitalist approach. So they're like, how can we support the body's own innate healing capacity so that it can get better? And that is more looking at, certainly they're going to use herbs, but they're going to look at the herbs from the point of view of what characteristics in that herb can stimulate the vitalism of the body. Not necessarily only treating symptoms, but how do we, activate the body so it's going to participate in this healing. And so there are the two streams in the naturopathic medicine. I bring in the science and the energy and talk about
Mhm.
both, because in my mind, from what I can gather and interpret, they're the same, because you can look
Right.
at chemistry and physics and understand the composition of an atom, which is mostly energy. And in this dimension, we seem like we're physical beings, but in reality, we're energetic beings, as you said. So it's
Mhm.
like, well, there's the energy piece, but there's what I have seen, several naturopathic doctors might not delve into the energy realm in terms of how to talk about it with patients.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And I think what I meant more so was, the idea of younger generation seeking a pharmaceutical solution compared to a naturopathic
Yeah.
remedy solution. So,
Yes.
that's kind of what I was heading towards. But anyways, it's all good. It's wonderful. Love the information. Yeah.
Right. So, Dr. Candice, in all the clients that you work with or patients, do you at the beginning you said people will seek out, or you recommend a discovery session to see if this is the right naturopathic doctor for you. Do you specialize, or what do you specialize in, or what are you finding that that's your niche?
Yes. So my niche has become fatigue. And I say that laughingly because it's actually one of the most difficult conditions to treat and diagnose.
But
And
you've experienced it yourself, so
yes, I have experienced fatigue myself, with related to an infection that thankfully, my naturopathic doctor in Ontario ordered a blood requisition and we found it. But the particular virus that I had, I don't find many people testing it. And so I'm on the hunt for it all the time. I don't find it all the time in my patient base, but I'm certainly on the lookout for it. And so in that whole journey of looking for this and being aware of the virus, I've uncovered other things, tons of organisms that create fatigue that do not look like the standard picture. So what we would call an atypical presentation. And I am floored, probably on a weekly basis, of how these different viruses or bacteria or parasites or candida can show up and create a picture of fatigue. It's just
Mm.
so interesting, because I've now mapped out different presentations of different viruses that I see. So I typically know now in the presentation that the patient shares which virus I'm going to be finding, which is
wow.
super interesting. And one of my acquaintance / colleagues in the States, she's like, "How do you know this?" I'm like, "Because I see this all the time." This is part of my daily life. I see this when I'm working with patients. So, but the fatigue picture gets very complicated. I'm talking about infections, but there's hormones, there's chemicals, there's heavy metals, there's all kinds of things that can create fatigue, on top of our already stressful lives. So it's very much an investigation to figure out the
The
picture of
cause.
fatigue.
Mhm.
Interesting. And now I'm going to back up a second, because you brought up hormones, and you brought up earlier that your clients, you're seeing the 25 to 35. So you have a wide range of client age groups, the ones suffering from fatigue and hormones or non-hormone related, I guess. Does it surprise your clients? Because I would say for myself, I know Anita and I are both morning people, and she has her power reduction about the same time I do, which is like mid-afternoon. It's like you just hit a wall. And I'm not asking for a diagnosis here, but is that actually a symptom of fatigue, or
Yes.
is that more diet?
That one has a little bit of overlap from what I've seen. Yes, there's a diet component. Typically, that can be corrected with diet. But if it's not corrected with diet, then it definitely is a symptom of fatigue. So there's a little bit of overlap in that one because of the timing of it.
But hormones don't necessarily play a role in that then.
In that particular picture, in an afternoon slump, yes.
So there is lots of little factors to take in.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Oh, so the one size fits all is not a descriptive way of handling things as in a naturopathic way.
No, no. So I would go into deep discussion with someone that might take 20 minutes to figure out why this fatigue picture is happening. When did it start? What does it look like? What things have they tried? What's not working? Also understand the stress picture, because is that a component of the fatigue? You know, or is sleep a factor in that they go to bed, but they wake up, you know, between 1 to 3 in the morning because their brain can't stop. Well, that's a different issue, has nothing to do with hormones at that point, but it's a sleep and an organ issue. So there's tons of little nuances in there to see why the fatigue picture is happening. Right. Or are they waking up because their organs suffering because trying to deal with an infection?
Right. Right. So yeah. So I can see where if Anita and I both went online, just saying WebMD or whatever pops up, and we put in fatigue, they would pop up the same solution, and it may not be appropriate for either of us.
Right. And that actually brings up another very good point. So the typical way to treat fatigue has been sleep, water, exercise, which I'll touch on in a moment, antipsychotic medication.
What?
Sure, let's have some of that.
And there's a fifth one in there. I can't remember at the moment, but exercise in some cases for people with fatigue is contraindicated in certain cases. So that's actually so someone actually could do themselves further damage if they were tired and then went exercising. The antipsychotic medication, as you know, some people that have depression are fatigued. And so some people with fatigue get prescribed antidepressant, which again would make it worse and might not actually be the originating issue of why they're tired.
Wow.
And I've actually even had the depression picture show up with certain viruses. So I'm like, well, which came first, the depression or the virus? And then the virus actually needs to be treated over, you know, it's kind of it's an interesting scenario that comes up.
Well, for sure. It's definitely case by case, but I think that's what I like about you. That's what I appreciate most about you. You listen. And this isn't a rush in, rush out. Let me write this and here you go. Come see me in 3 weeks, which kind of brings us back to one of the original questions that Anita had asked. That's got to be one of the biggest differences between seeing a GP and a naturopathic doctor.
Yeah. The timing of visits really is dependent upon the patient. It depends on their investment and commitment level for sure. And it also depends on what's going on. So typically at the front end, we like to see people more often. So about once a month for the first 3 months. While we're constantly reassessing and readjusting the first treatment program and really peeling back the layers of the onion, because things change. And some people's bodies actually change very quickly. Some people's bodies take a little bit more time, which is fine. It's all individual. And so we adjust accordingly. And those adjustments are helping the patient meet their goal.
Okay, so again, you know, I think we're going to have you back again because, you know, the time thing again, but I have just a couple more things that I think are really important. Number one, do you work with clients remotely?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Because I'm sure that's a question that a lot of people have just had. Oh my gosh, I'd love to come and see her, but I don't live in Red Deer, Alberta, right?
Neither does she.
So yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. What do I, yeah. So remotely, yes. Okay. So again, in the comments and links below, that's how you can get a hold of Dr. Candice. And then, you know, final question before we close up the channel. What motivates you? You know, what's your motivation to get up every day and see clients? And, you know, what's that spark? What's that, you know, where does that fuel come from?
I'm going to say two things. One is the aspiration to freedom. And 2 is having the honor of being witness to my patients on their journey and having insights and ahas. That
Mm,
just lights my day.
So for the
awesome.
patients to have those ahas?
Yes. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very
So,
cool.
awesome.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I
Thank you.
agree with Anita. I think there's definitely a part 2 coming up.
Mhm.
If assuming you're open to that, because this was
Yes.
very, very fascinating. And you could tell by her giggle, she's just
Yep.
fun. She's just
Mhm.
fun.
Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Candice. As Anita mentioned in the comments below, how to get a hold of Dr. Candice, we'll put in there. And thank you for meeting yet another member of our flock.
Mhm.
F.L.A.W.C. And if you ever come up with a definition for that, Dr. Candice, I'd love to hear your take on it, because Anita is going to explain where it started.
Cool.
Well, you know what? It started out as the Fruit Loop and Wind Chime Club. And however, you know, every guest so far has a different meaning or interpretation of that acronym. And you know what? It's a beautiful thing. And again, it's our introduction to our flock so that everyone has the opportunity to fly high. Let's go. Let's take flight, right? Let's do it together.
Perfect.
So again, it was a pleasure. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for tuning in.